right, I think we're ready to start our monthly webinar. So welcome to MINOREA's monthly construction webinar. The whole entire purpose of MINOREA is to be able to empower disadvantaged businesses to promote diversity for growth. And we provide resources and direction, training, and any type of education so that small contractors, medium-sized contractors can make a wise decision in regards of their growth. And today's topic is a very good topic and also a controversial topic in regards of union, because there's a lot of contractors that talk a lot about good things and bad things about union. So our priority is to educate. It's more important for a contractor to get educated and decide on their own if a decision in business is good for them or not. I have a visual of a peanut. And the reason why I have a visual of a peanut is because if we recommended a certain side of going union or not going union, of the pros and cons, it's like us recommending you a peanut. Anyone can have good thoughts of it, or it can be some might be even allergic to a peanut. Some might like it. It's just up to the contractor to decide, or to the company to decide whether this really works. Just like, each individual gets to decide what they eat and what they don't. If they like it, everybody has different palates. Everybody has different reactions towards different foods. It's the same example to a decision in regards of going union or non-union. So we are completely neutral. We're here to educate you. And obviously, I'm not a person, a professional. So we always invite professionals that know about subjects to be our guest speakers. So we're gonna consider, what the advantages and some of the disadvantages that a lot of contractors think, right? But now we're gonna go ahead and get you to really, before we get started, get you to really think what is your vision of your company and what direction you want to take while you're going through this webinar and reviewing it. And decide for yourself if this is a really good option, or if it's not, if maybe you're not prepared for that, you're not in this phase, or if you are. So now let's talk about our webinar overview. We're going to talk about, as we go through the slides, there might be some questions that you have. Please hold them towards the end of the webinar. We are going to address all the questions. On the bottom, you might see some options of Q&A. Address the questions there. There's also a chat box. If you have any technical issues, please address them in the chat box. That way our tech representative can help us, Mauricio, in answering any of the technical problems. Now, our guest speaker is a very special one. He's a really good friend of mine as well, but he has a vast amount of experience. He has over 50 years of experience in risk management, and he's dealt with hundreds of companies. And I'm sure he's dealt with a lot of contractors that face this situation or want to go to the next level and have the same question. So now he's going to be able to show us and explain to us what is what is union, right? So let's start with the first question, Jim. And his name is Jim Biceri. Sorry about that. So the question is, how did the union workforce originated. Would you be able to explain that before we address any of the additional questions that a lot of contractors might have? Jim? Oh, Jim, I think you might be on mute. Can you hear me? Jim, you're on mute. We can hear you. No, it's not working? Oh, it was working. It's interesting because it was working right now. To unmute. Let me see. Try to unmute again.
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
okay. No, the unmute button wasn't working. I guess I wasn't ready for this, or people didn't want to hear me. Anyway, I just said thank you for allowing me to be a part of this educational seminar on the unions. And the first question that you give me, Andrea, is a pretty deep question. I mean, I could set up a history course and just discuss the origination of unionization in the United States, going back all the way to our industrial period and the various unions that started at separate times. Let's say that generally speaking, the reason that unions began is because of issues with employers and employees. The employer always wanted to maximize the effort of the employee. The employee wanted to maximize his paychecks. And so they were always at some kind of conflict. And so it goes without saying that unions have always been controversial from the very beginning in the United States. The pro-union people believe unions are one of the basic building blocks of a strong workforce. And the opponents say unions are too restrictive and hurt working class employees. So this is what the basis is. But originally, as you know, the old AFL, which is the American Federation of Labor, which is the first collective large union, which later merged with the CIO, which is the Congress of Industrial Organization, and it became the AFL-CIO. That's, of course, the origins of the various unions. And each one began to establish strength in specific artisan trades and professions. So you would have the electrical workers union, the contractors, general contractors unions, the artisans, the plumbers, and it goes on the artisans. On the professional side, you had school districts and professional public employees unionizing for the same thing. In fact, a few statistics for you to work with is that union membership rate of public sector employees is about 34% of the public sector employees belong to a union, compared to the private sector, which is only about 6.5%. So obviously the public sector employees have a much better organization, and it seems to work better in their behalf. There's other statistics. Men tend to have a higher union membership than women, except in the teaching trades. As you know, one of the largest unions is the UTA, the United Teachers Association, which is a huge organization of teaching of educators. So anyway, I can go on and on. As I said, I want to be brief, but it's suffice to say that it was intended for having equal negotiating skill between employer and employee. If the employer has all the power, the employee has none. If the employee has all the power, the employer has none. So it was a means of creating a benefit or a balance between the two powers to negotiate and for the best of both. I hope that wasn't too lengthy for you.
No, that was great, and it's important to understand what it is, because sometimes you hear about union and these are union jobs or these are union opportunities, but in reality we don't know the history and how it originated, right? So it's very important to understand that part. So now, how and what does the union offer to contractors?
Well, we're first talking about the employees. People join unions because they provide a lot of good benefits. So let's talk a little bit about that, of why people join unions. And oftentimes it's because of better benefits. It's because of better negotiating skills. It's because of economic benefits that we'll go into in a little bit. But here, the dues and qualifications are usually an impediment to getting onto a union. But what the contractors benefit is that if a union is well run, and not all unions are created equal, let's put it that way. But if you're in a good union that has a good educational program, that has a good participation, you as a contractor have access to multiple employees at multiple times. So as a contractor, instead of hiring 20 people for a job that's only going to last a few weeks, or a job that requires 10 people in 1 week, and then 2-3 weeks later, you need 20 more, and then a week later, you need one. So this fluctuating of manpower for you as a union owner, as a contractor, is quite a challenge. If you're with a good union, then you can call the union and say, look, I need 10 men over at such and such location for this many weeks, and you have them. You don't have to go through the process to locate all this manpower. So accessibility to manpower is very important on large jobs for a lot of the unions, both the artisan unions and the bigger unions. Now, the other question you have on this chart here is, how does EMR, safety rating and insurance, matter? Well, EMR is experience modified rating, and that deals with every employer has an experience of losses on the employees that they hire. If an employer is not responsible and cognizant of those losses, he creates a high EMR. That means that his percentage is higher than average. If 100% is average on your losses and you have 120%, you're 20% higher. And these figures are established by the Workers' Comp Insurance Rating Bureau, the WCRIB. They're in charge of issuing these ratings and tracking employee claims to determine which employers are providing better safety training and being more concerned about employee injuries. So EMR is critical. If you're a small contractor and you have a high EMR, you may not be able to get many jobs with the primes, because the primes really focus in on your experience rating, your EMR, before they consider you as one of their contractors, one of their subcontractors. So EMR is critical. It's just not only for getting jobs, but it's also critical for your own efficiencies in your company. Too many losses are going to increase your workers' comp rate, and you won't be competitive in the environment. If you're bidding on a contract and you have a 100 and plus EMR, and you're bidding against somebody who has a 60 EMR, that means they've already got a 30 or 40% cost advantage on the workers' comp rate alone. So that could be significant. So it's really, really important to have a good safety program and maintain your losses as low as you can. And the opportunities that there for competition, what are the opportunities in competition when going union? Well, I stated a few. If you're a union, in some cases, you can't even get a job unless you're a union. Some of the, especially municipalities and government operations, do not do business with non-union contractors. So if you're a non-union contractor, you're already eliminated from dozens and dozens of large projects. So in some cases, it's a necessity, if not a critical requirement, for you to maintain a union membership, depending on the field that you're in. And again, you talked earlier about the pros and the cons and whether or not you should or shouldn't. And it's really, the best answer is it all depends. It all depends on what you do. It all depends on the nature of your company and the customer base that you are addressing. So those are general comments on these three sections here.
Yeah, and if I can dig a little deeper on those last two questions. In regards to the EMR, I know it's very important for safety standards, for it not to affect your EMR, but is there any difference between, let's say you're getting a labor worker on the field and they're under or you're a union company. Is there any difference as being a union company on the factoring safety ratings than a non-union company?
No, no, the measurement process and the data accumulated is the same. It doesn't matter whether you're union or non-union. The key is that you have to, as an employer, regardless of your size, you have to carry workers' compensation, and you have to report all your losses to the Workers' Compensation Rating Plan, WCRIB Bureau. And you also are subject to OSHA requirements and standards. OSHA is the Occupational Safety Health Act, which oversees employers on safety over their workers. And there's many standards that they require that you meet up to. But the key to EMR, the key to maintaining a good loss ratio, is really how you manage your employees and how you address safety. If safety is an important part of your function and you stress it with your employees, you're going to have a positive result. If you believe that an accident is an accident and it cannot really be prevented, it just happens, it happens, then you've got a kind of a laissez-faire attitude towards safety. You're more than likely going to be outpriced out of the market. The number of claims you may have may be way out of normal. And of course, it'll impact your company and eventually impact your costs severely. But no difference. But unions tend to be better trained. The employees that go through their unions usually get trained at their unions. So at the very least, they have apparently better training on safety.
Oh, okay, great. And then in regards of the opportunities, you mentioned that there's a lot of opportunities that you might be missing out if you're non-union. Can you specify, because I know there's a lot of areas where they require, actually California would be a union state, what they call a union state, because there's a lot of areas that are required, regardless of the project, that are required for union inclusion or local union workers inclusion, right?
Correct. Well, again, we'll go back to who's giving the jobs. Is this a state entity? Is this a prime contract that is doing work for a government entity? For example, most universities, I know that University of Southern California, USC, has tremendous amount of construction projects that they conduct year after year. They're always building and rebuilding, and they only work with unions. Most of their jobs, when they put out an RFP for a proposal for a contract, it usually goes to union contractors. So if you're not a member of a union, don't even bother to apply. Now, once a prime receives the contract, a major contract, and he is handling it, he's going to hire a bunch of subcontractors. He's got to bring in a lot of his subs to complete that job. Every one of his subs also has to be unionized. So he's got some trouble if he wants to bring in a sub that he likes very much, but they're a non-union sub. And we'll get into how that still can happen even on a non-union company, but it's a more difficult process. So he's got to look to all these plumbers and framers and electricians and cement workers and concrete work, all the subs that he's going to be using. If he's a union, have to be union. So if you're not, and you're one of these subs, you're going to miss out. You won't even have the opportunity to bid on those jobs. And there's tremendous amount of work in the public sector.
Yes, there is, and I know that it's even on the large private organizations or corporate companies have that too. Like the theme parks, all the theme parks are unionized. So if in case there's opportunities, a lot of contractors will have to face that decision of whether to go union or not. Or later on, we can talk about, or actually, this is the portion where we can talk about other options. Let's say well, I've faced situations where I talk to general contractors, and general contractors are a little more faced with a little more challenges than trade contractors when going union, because a lot of the dues are according to the trade. So if you self-perform multiple trades, then you might have to face the challenge of having to pay multiple dues. So what would be a strategy to overcome those challenges?
Well, again, it depends on your size and it depends on the market and who you're working for, whether or not you want to go through the process. It is quite extensive in the administration of multiple unions because you would have to be a member of multiple unions. You'd have to be, for example, if you're a general contractor and you're self-performing most of these trades and not subbing them out, then you would have to be a member of each trade. The contractors, the plumbers trades, the electrician trades. There's a whole slew of different artisan trades that you would have to belong to, and it can be quite challenging. And you would probably need a full-time person just managing your union contracts and the administration that's required with each union. So it isn't a simple process. Most of the general contractors don't self-perform for that reason. They usually hire hire subs that are already unionized, and they can become members of a union without having any specific trades, so that they can hire into those trades. Here you asked about a PLA. That's a way for some contracts to be performed that are union required, and the PLA stands for private labor agreement, where you would basically be a member of the union specifically for that job and that job only. So you sign an agreement and you have to perform all of the duties of being a union member, and with regards to that particular project or job. So it allows you to step into what it feels like to be a union company for a project and later decide whether that's worth it to you to become a full-time dues member company, a full-time union company. So it does afford some flexibility. As far as your bidding, if there is a PLA option in the job, you'll know it because the prime will let you know that they do have a PLA. And what you have to know as a private contractor that doesn't have union experience is understanding the labor costs. Each union establishes their labor costs for the tiered employees, for journeymen, for apprentices, and for laborers. And so you have to know that because your job is not dependent on what you pay your people, but what you're going to be required to pay the people in that project. And usually there will be a process where your payroll needs to be certified. So you need to know what the prevailing wage is for that territory. So again, you need a good HR person to dig in and get all of the appropriate rates, understand all of the appropriate forms that need to be completed, and there are services out there that will help you. There are multiple services that will assist you through that process, but it does provide an option for some, and it's kind of a peek into what it's like to be a union company.
Thank you. And that's very important to understand. Sometimes there's a lot of contractors that look at an opportunity and they see that section on the bid aspect, but they don't account for the extra fees that they have to pay for that project. And up until they get awarded, they realize that there are dues that they still have to pay regardless of their of the benefits, the fringe benefits they already have. So that also could affect their bidding advantages, because for a union contractor, they're already paying that and they're already factoring that. But for a contractor that isn't a union contractor, but they're considering a PLA, that might affect their pricing
very significantly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to bring in an expert on that area before they bid.
Yeah. And if in case, talking about expert, if in case you need more information, just feel free to contact me. Jim has a lot of experience in that too. We can refer you to the right direction. And there's a lot of organizations that are free, that are willing to evaluate some of the opportunities and contracts that you're looking at. So now a really big question. This is like in a conversation of every networking event related to contractors, right? So if once you decide to go union, you can't go back. Is that true?
No, not entirely true. It's almost practically true. It is very, very difficult. But it depends on when you sign your first union contract agreement that stipulates within those terms and conditions whether or not this is a temporary, long-term, and also have provisions that say under what conditions can you terminate the union. I had a contractor that in the electrical trades that went into the union thinking that he was going to go in for a year and that they were going to assist him in getting contracts. Well, that never happened, and this contractor happened to be providing services in the private sector, and he was priced adequately in the private sector. But once you join the union, you have to abide by the union wages, and you cannot segregate your different classes of pay. You can, but by the union standards, again, based on whether the person, what position he holds in the hierarchy, a journeyman, apprentice, and even they have grades of apprentices. So the point is that he went in the union thinking he could easily get out. When he never got any contracts for municipalities, he was no longer competitive in the service industry that he was currently involved in. So it nearly broke him. He had to go through a lot of steps, and after 3 years, it finally was able to get an agreement that he can exit the union. But it nearly broke the company, and they struggled. I have another contractor with the opposite. He was given a large contract because he was a minority contractor. He was a disabled veteran, and he didn't have the manpower. So the union was a lifesaver. He was able to man the jobs, and he got huge jobs. He got about $7 million worth of work, all because he had access to the workforce. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know where to begin. So the union was a godsend and a blessing to him on one artisan trade, and it was a near disaster for another one. So we go back to it all depends. Each situation is different. You have to know, why do you want to join the union? What business are you in? Who are your customer base? How do you want to grow? And you definitely have to understand the union mentality for you to move into that direction. It's a critical step.
Right. So now, if in case a contractor is ready to go union, what are the steps that you usually have to take?
Well, usually contacts is the local union in the trade that he's contemplating. Unions have the different chapters and locations, and so a union representative would go out and meet him, a senior union person. They would have discussions. They would let them know the advantages and disadvantages, and during those discussions, they would try to solicit his involvement, his membership. And then there would be a step-by-step process. Once he made that decision, then there's a lot of paperwork to be had. All of his people would have to become members of the union. He signs his labor agreement, his union agreement, and within probably 30 to 90 days, he can become a full union company. But again, it's not an easy process. It isn't a 1, 2, 3. You just walk up and say, "Hey, I want to join. I want to be a member of this club. Can I join tomorrow?" And they're going to say, "Of course you can. Come right in." But it is a complex process, and at least they are pretty good at explaining to you. The union officials that you discuss with will go over all the details and try to make it as painless as possible for you to make that transition.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the risks. Some of the fears that a lot of contractors have is, what if I can't pay the dues? What if we don't have work? What solutions do they offer, or what can they do?
Well, first of all, you need to understand those risks, because if you're not financially sound as a company, then you cannot join the union. It's going to kill you to join the union, because there's no forgiveness. There's no forgiveness on missing not only the dues, but the fringe benefits. You're agreeing to pay the fringe benefits, and you pay those through a third-party administrator through the union. And so you've got different sections that you're paying, and these are a good increase in what you were used to paying. So if you're not ready to undertake and have the financial stability, then unions are not good for you, because again, they're not forgiving. You owe the money. This is you're a fiduciary. You need to set those funds aside, and they need to be paid along with each and every pay period. So you need to have a good administrator, a good HR department. All of these things need to be in place. Otherwise, you're stepping into a quagmire that could literally put your company out. But if you do a good job, it's not as difficult. If you have the adequate cash flow, you should be able to meet it. If you have a good HR department, a good payroll department, everything just falls into place. But it isn't easy for the first timer.
Okay, good. And are there any organizations or any type of assistance to help with these growing pains relative to going union?
Well, once you join the union and you made the decision, the transition team from the union itself will be there to assist you. They'll help you set up your payroll, your classifications, the forms that you need to fill out. They do a pretty good job of assisting you through that process. They contact your employees. You notify your employees. Your employees initially are kind of excited about it. The unions offer lots of good benefits for the employees that they've never been used to. And they do give a little bit of job security, because if your contractor gets slow on work and has to be terminated, well, you're a union member. You just run over to the hall and you wait for an assignment. And the union usually get a flow of requests for these artisans, and they send you out. So, but the transition is not that bad, and it's again back to a good union with a good union program. They again make that transition as easy as they can for you, because it's to their benefit to acclimate you to the union life and the union procedures. They want you to be a full-time member forever. They don't want you to ever leave, and that's important to their credibilities and survivability. So yeah, don't worry about that. I think they'll help you through that transition.
Yeah, so it's only a call away, I guess, if you are deciding on going union.
You just have to be financially prepared. That's what I overemphasize. If you're weak in your cash flow, if your capital is weak, you don't want to take on that additional responsibility. So if you talk to your controller, he'd be the key guy. Or if you don't have a chief financial officer or controller, then get a hold of a good business consultant that understands the dynamics of the financial stresses and requirements that are necessary to be in the union.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Jim. This was very informative. Now I think we're going to open it for questions. But I know that this subject is there's a lot more to this subject, right? So if for any reason you can't, you don't address the question, or if for any reason you need some information or you need to go back to the webinar or to review it, we do record it. And for all the registrants, you are going to receive a copy of this webinar, so you can look at it or review it. And then if you have any additional questions, like I mentioned, contact us and let us know. But at this moment, let me look at at this moment, it doesn't seem like there are any questions. But I do have a really quick question. Is there whenever a contractor is considering going union and they make that phone call to meet with a union representative, is there a pre-qualification that they go over, or is it something that it's up to you, it's your homework to see if you're financially sound and if there's opportunities and what direction to go, or is there a little bit of help initially to qualify you?
Well, it's difficult to get third-party help because whoever you go to, there's going to be some slant. Some private consultants will shy you away from unions, period. Some will encourage you to go into the union. So it's difficult to find really objective, critical thinking analysis of whether or not you're ready. But I think you have to do your own homework, and you have to talk to the union, and they'll give you a lot of information for you to work with. Before you make your decision, you're not obligated because you had these conversations and you're contemplating joining the union. They will want you to join sooner than later, but they're not going to force you to join. And it allows you to gather all the information you need, maybe talk to other union members and talk to non-union members. And then you get a little bit of both sides of the fence. And then again, to have a consultant, a risk analyst, somebody like myself who will be able to look at your company and determine whether you are benefiting from a union or not would be strong. So if you can find some business consultants out there that can do a objective analysis, it'll help you in the decision process, because it is a tough decision, but it can mean a big jump in revenue for your company, or the opposite. So it is a do or die kind of situation. Yeah. I have stories. I have horror stories on both sides of the fence, and I have tremendous benefits, positive for the unions. So it isn't anything about assessing whether or not, or making a judgment call, or whether the unions are good or bad. The unions are good. They're great. They're fantastic. And in some cases, they don't fit. And you have to understand that. If they don't fit, they don't fit. You can't squeeze them in. But without unions, we have to understand that our whole labor and benefit structure that we joined today and that we enjoy today is due to our unions that fought for these benefits over years. All these benefits that you take for granted, like vacation pay and sick leave, those were all promulgated and negotiated by unions. Prior to that, there was no such thing. Days off for all these things. Now we have laws that implement. We have a labor department that implements a lot of employee laws, good labor laws. But prior to that, the only way you could get any protection was the unions. And so the unions have been really responsible in promulgating some of these strong labor laws to protect employees.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this association really started a while back, and due to that, we have a lot of privileges that before a lot of employees wouldn't benefit off. Thank you so much, Jim, for all your help. And
okay.
we'd love to stay here and hear all your stories, because I know you've helped so many contractors out there with situations, especially when it comes to your specialty. But feel free to connect. We have all the social medias available. If in case you want to connect through social media, you can go to our website, email us, and I would be more than happy to direct you to the right source, understand what your challenges are. And of course, Jim has plenty of experience. He can also direct you to the right source as well to solve any of your problems, because construction is a very specific trade, and it's very demanding. So we are here to help. And thank you so much, Jim, for all your help.
Well, can I take a minute and plug a course? We provide a 8-week business boot camp, and this course gives you a lot of information in managing and running and operating your business, and it gives you some fundamental education. I call it kind of a mini MBA, a small master's in business administration. Because the key to success in business is not necessarily having the skill sets that you possess that got you into business. It's about the other half is about running and managing and operating the business. So this course that we provide is a weekly course. It's going to be given on Saturday for 8 weeks, and it touches on all these areas, including whether or not to be a union member, how to read contracts. It goes into branding your company, how to grow your company, how to develop a business plan, how to understand the risks and exposures and how to manage your insurance and your contracts and your accounting. What is the proper way to maintain accounting for taxes and minimization of taxes? So all these things are covered over this 8-week period. So if anybody is interested, please contact Andrea, and she'll direct you with all the details about this business boot camp. I conduct that every year. In fact, just to say, Andrea was one of my attending students at one time, and look at her now.
Yes, I was a student, and it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be there. It was an eye opener on a lot of items that you need to address when it comes to business. And one of the mistakes that a lot of contractors do, especially when they're small and they're trying to go into these larger contracts, is that usually they started with a skill and they had a lot of demand with that skill, but they didn't necessarily understood the process of doing business on its own. And obviously, if they're really busy, they'll get stuck. They won't be able to level up and go on to additional contracts or commercial, private, federal contracts, because there's a big demand of doing business the right way. And Jim really emphasizes that. He gives really good information and material where you can get educated and start leveling up. Don't get stuck, right? Where there's a lot of resources out there. And then, of course, if you like his stories, he's going to be able to tell us a lot more stories on that boot camp. And
tons of stories.
Yeah, they do it every year. We highly encourage you. Actually, as a matter of fact, for all the registrants, we'll make sure to include the flyer. Latin Business Association is the association that usually does these boot camps. And there's a lot of other boot camps. But if you want this particular Jim as a particular teacher, that's the boot camp that you probably want to attend. So thank you for sharing that and reminding me of that, Jim.
Thank you. Real pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Have a great day. Yeah, have a great day, and then we'll see you next month.
Excellent.
Bye.
Look forward to it. Okay. Bye-bye now.